Thank you very much for all of you and to all of you. And I also would like to thank the organizers and to my friends who mentioned about civilization from different perspectives and by different thinkers. But in this point, it is important to look at civilization debate from different perspectives. I mean, most of the perspectives are from West or from Middle East, but how about Far East? How about Eastern part like India, China, etc.? How they see the civilization and how they approach. That's why I intentionally select Tagore's understanding of civilization. It is also, you will see it is interesting. He approaches in different way, which is in some case similar to Islamic understanding of civilization. And I don't know how many of you knows who is Tagore. Maybe anyone? Can you raise your hand? Who heard it before? Very less. Yeah, only He was known as a literature, but basically he was born in 1861 and died in 1941 in West Bengal, India. He was a poet, writer, and humanitarian, and one of the most influential thinkers in India. And also he was the first Indian who won a Nobel Prize for literature and who had played a key role in the renaissance of modern India. So why did I select this topic is because in early 20th century, most of the Western and Eastern thinkers promoted that Western civilization is a supreme and unique, and he was the one in Asia who opposed this idea, and he said that this is a dominant ideology. So instead of that, he proposed a new understanding of civilization, which I will be discussing now. In this paper, I intend to find out what civilization looks like for Tagore. Actually, this was a paper at our institute, but later on I worked on it to develop it. Because when I searched on Tagorean studies, most of the works are like literature, poems, and this kind of things. But actually, he spent a lot of time to describe what a civilization looks like, not only for India, for human beings, for in general. So first of all, he starts by explaining the word civilization. He says that civilization is considered by Westerns as progress. Every development is a kind of progress, but he says we need to ask progress for what and for whom. And to him, this sort of understanding represents the imperial Europe. It doesn't represent an Eastern understanding of civilization. And what Western world understand from the civilization is actually nationalism, which is based on race. And he says, of course, every nation has its own distinctive national heritage, but as an Eastern, we must forever give up the habit of trusting Europe. European history and European society is not ours. Unlike Europe, India, he uses India as a case example, but he mostly mentions the Eastern nation societies. He says India has adopted the history as a cycle between the past and future through Upanishads, ancient poetry, social rituals, and religion. Also, India, unlike Europe, is composed of many countries packed in one geography. It is not only like one nation or one race is there. That's why he draws an original term from Indian tradition, philosophical tradition called dharma. Dharma, instead of civilization, as I said, he was mentioning civilization. His word itself has a problem. That's why dharma can be used to describe civilization. Like in Sanskrit, as he mentions, the dharma is the best nearest synonym in the Sanskrit language. And the specific meaning of the dharma is that the principle which holds us together and lead us to our best welfare. And he was emphasizing on the ancient tradition of Hindu heritage. the concept of dharma for him is a kind of development of human achievement. Dharma is best level of society. By talking about this level, he doesn't necessarily refer to India, as I said, but he says he meant any society has right to achieve this level, which is like best level, but without colonizing others. We can see he's criticizing British colony in India. It must come from inside the society that leads people to the human perfection. So, Tagore thinks the concept of civilization is a European property, and it exclusively simplifies its meaning. A larger meaning of it is dharma is that dharma for man is best expression of what he is in truth. He may reject dharma and become an animal, but this will be worse than death for him as a man. So he used education as a tool to construct the civilization. First of all, he criticized that India should have her own education system. He says if we place education in the hands of the British government, then they will attempt to, through that education, to fulfill their own interest, not ours, their own kind of understanding of civilization. That's why he says if India doesn't have her own way of education, the Western concept taught will be dominant in Indian culture. Of course, he is not against to exchange ideas and tools from different civilizations, but he says the dharma, the civilization, which is best expression, should come from inside the society. He also was worried about the dehumanization of technological development. He stated that the extreme idealization and the technology would harm the human salvation. And he was very much against nationalism. He was claiming that nationalism is a deconstruction of the civilization. The time we see that time when he was mentioning this kind of argument, it was the time of First World War, and India was intensively active in terms of social mobility. There were actively functioning social and national movements in West Bengal. There was a movement, Swadeshi national movement against the British policy. Initially, Tagore was involved with this movement, and he even wrote some poem about them to encourage them. But later on, he realized that the movement is turning too violent against two non-Hindus, especially Muslims or some British innocent civils, and even many innocent people were killed. When he saw this violence, he stepped back and he didn't support any nationalist movement. Even he started to hate the nationalism, we can say. And even he didn't support the Gandhi's nationalist movement against the British rule. So nationalism, as Tagore describes, is a kind of organization of politics and commerce by the Western power. And this kind of nationalism spreads selfishness and power to set up material moral man, or so-called complete man. He argued that nationalism cannot be self-expression of a man as a social being. Naturally, man is able to cooperate with one another, and that's why he said that nationalism is a threat to humanity, actually. And he claims that nationalism also has been used as justification of colonialism by British. When British were in West Bengal in India, they promoted the nationalism, but he says this nationalism is not beneficial for the sake of India's future. That's why he was against even Gandhi's movement. And even he says there was no Indian nationalism until British arrived in India. They were not aware of it even. One could say there were nations in the continent, but many various societies share similar culture and live together for over the centuries. And he says, we in India must make up our minds that we cannot borrow other people's history, and that if we do, it means we are committing suicide. When you borrow things that do not belong to your life, they only serve to crush your life. Here, let me a little bit explain. He is not against to getting something from other civilizations, but he is against to adoption and assimilation and this kind of things. It's not only for India, in Turkey, in any other society also, when something is adopted from out and adopted from any far or near civilization, the structure of the society itself is changing. That's a problem, he's saying. That's why he gives an example of Japan civilization. He says Japan civilization is a unique and original. It has taken some good parts from the West, and also it pursues its own path, evolves its own civilization and tradition. That's why it's not a political, but it is social and based on humanity. Instead of nationalism, Tagore provides a concept, internationalism, as a solution for perfect civilization. In this case, like Tagore is also writer of national anthem of India and Bangladesh also. So in some point he was titled as patriotic. Okay, he was patriotic, but his understanding of patriotism was different from others. He describes as conscience, inclusive, and love for humanity. He had a strong belief in the dialogue between civilizations. So he states that instead of limited nationalism, there must be internationalism and universal humanism. All human beings interrelated to each other. A person is not only belonging to his or her country where he or she was born, he or she lives in the world of humanity as well. That's why he claims that whatever problems occur in the society are mutual. No one can skip it. If there is a crisis in Germany, it's not only problems of German, or in Turkey, it's not problems of Turkey. It is general, it is mutual. That's why the idea of internationalism doesn't necessarily force anyone to be a socialist or capitalist. It just guarantees the spiritual kindness based on harmony of different races and religions. He basically proposed this idea of internationalism as an inter-civilizational alliance, which is related to our institute, which is a combination of the East and West. In a letter he wrote his friend Paul Westcott like this: "Believe me, nothing would give me greater happiness than to see the people of the East and East march in a common crusade against all problems that human spirit is facing." So we see how much, in that time he was open-minded and was calling other civilizations also to unite. My concluding remarks would be like, he eagerly emphasized on the idea of alliance of East and West, and he understands civilization as the meaning of the perfect man. This perfectness cannot be belonging to any particular region. He claims that the concept of dharma could be used instead of civilization for Eastern understanding of civilization. He claims that civilization in the European's hand is used as a tool of commerce and politics. In order to have the best expression of civilization, the education system must be organized very well. Even he published a university in Santinikat on the north part of West Bengal to educate his people, his relatives. And his hope was that if India could establish a bridge between the various ethnic and religious groups by a social cooperation and mutual spirit, she could hold herself as a model of unity for the rest of the world. But unfortunately, nationalism was getting stronger when he was writing the book Nationalism. Tagore believes in international coexistence, we can say, and he believed that both Eastern and Western should unite for the future of human being to solve human crisis problems. And thank you for listening.